Now, more now from the Cannes Lions Festival of Creativity. Paul Gunning is the Chief Digital Officer from the DDB agency, and he's got a fascinating view, as you'll see, on how campaigns in developing economies are seemingly bypassing big screens and going straight to mobile. He spoke to us in the south of France.
Being the Chief Digital Officer for DDB really has two parts, major parts to the job. The first part is working with clients, most important part, helping them understand what the digital environment can bring them. What are the opportunities? How can it drive their business forward? And so I have to explain that to them and help drive those new models into their business, if you will. There's another half that's quite important, which is within our own agency. For the past 50 years, we hire advertising experts, either kids who come out of ad school or from other advertising agencies. Now what we're having to do is train our existing staff on digital opportunities, train them on how the internet works from an advertising perspective, train them on how mobile works from an advertising point of view. And so it's really both those angles of clients and internal with our employees that they kind of rely on me for that leadership. It feels like we're reinventing the industry every single year. Radio, print, and TV have been relatively the same for decades. The internet, we didn't have anyone to tell us how to make it before it came along, how to do the advertising models on it. And then mobile advertising comes along, and then back in the early 2000s when broadband started turning on, a lot of video came online. We didn't have models to deal with it then. Social media, obviously, with Facebook is brand new. Even I remember when we were looking at this little company called Google and trying to figure out what were these blue things and how is this going to work. And I mean, that's only 10 years old. So what's unique is it's always new. Which is fun, but it also is really challenging because I work with very big clients, very big brands that want to know how these innovations can drive their business, and it's a lot of responsibility to try and figure that out, what feels like every year something new. We all remember the days of dial-up, and I don't think our behavior, the time we spend online, how much we do online, all the entertainment, all the utility, we wouldn't have done that in a dial-up if we had been dial-up for the past 15 years. You just get too frustrated. So with broadband, it just allowed our experience as a consumer to just be so much more enjoyable. That opened up the gates, if you will, for all sorts of activities, including entertainment. Can't go in with a one-size-fits-all approach. What works in New York is not going to work in South Africa necessarily. What works in Brazil may not work in China. So there's a lot of learning that I do, and probably my most fortunate role is that I get to then move around the world and bring those learnings to other offices and help keep the company networked. We probably would have answered that question, say 10 years ago, a little differently. Now what we think is it's going to immediately jump to mobile in the emerging countries. And so we don't necessarily look at it as a broadband question anymore. We look at is how these emerging markets are bypassing the internet or the computer internet, if you will, and going straight to the mobile device for their access point. That's highly different, not just because of the connection speeds and not just because of the physical size of the device being different, but because people are accessing the internet on their mobile device and they're actually mobile. They're moving around. They're closer to products on shelf. They're closer to restaurants, the front door of a restaurant like a McDonald's. They're closer to a Volkswagen dealership. So now that's a big change to start to impact consumers when they're actually moving around and are that close to our clients' products. We had a fabulous campaign out of our office in the Philippines called Textbooks, and it's literally putting textbooks on phones so that students can get their hands on them, because physical books can be quite problematic. So I thought that was a brilliant campaign, very simple insight, very simple execution, but a wonderful campaign, and obviously the jury thought so too, as it won. One of our most favorite campaigns right now is out of our office in Toronto, Canada, which we do for McDonald's, called Your Questions Are Food, which allows consumers to ask any question of McDonald's and their food, the quality, how it's made, how it's prepared, and we answer them back in fun, engaging ways online and on the mobile phone. Our two biggest clients are Volkswagen and McDonald's, and I think they're both doing an excellent job of using the mobile phone. I think Volkswagen does wonderful work both with not only advertising on the mobile phone, but also they've brought iPads into the showrooms. For example, in the United Kingdom, into every showroom, there's an iPad that consumer and salespeople can use at the same time to make that shopping experience a little rich, a little more engaging, and quite honestly, a little more simpler. And I think McDonald's is doing an amazing job right now with using the mobile phone to order. You can actually order ahead of time in France for McDonald's products. In Asia, you can use your mobile phone and order and have it delivered to your home. In the Netherlands, we're using the mobile phone to do couponing. And in Sweden, we're using the mobile phone to actually complete a payment device.
The views there of Paul Gunning from the DDB agency talking to us a little earlier in Cannes in the south of France. Now, Dr. Thomas Oosthuizen is one of the country's leading brand thinkers and has just published a seminal book on communication. It's called The Brand Book. It's a comprehensive guide to the do's and don'ts of marketing and demystifies marketing and brand jargon using useful examples at both local and global levels. He popped in earlier in the week. In the book, you make the point that marketing is an opportunity cost. For those of us who are not intimately involved in this discipline, what are you saying?
Marketing resources is like any other resource of a company. It needs to have return. And from that point of view, it's an opportunity cost. Because if you can spend your marketing funds better than competitors, then obviously you will benefit greater. So the whole premise for me was, how can we spend marketing funds in a better way and maximize the application of our resources? And
given the economic downturn that we're facing right now,
I think it's
I'm assuming diminishing marketing budget as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's even more opportune. You know.
But you also go on to make the point that companies waste their marketing efforts, ergo they're also wasting their marketing budget. Why do they do that?
Well, you know, you can go and look at discussions on LinkedIn about how many CEOs question marketing spend. I mean, there's a company in the UK that does a lot of research on the efficiency of marketing. And last year there was a finding by the Fornays group that said 73% of CEOs, of 600 global CEOs, said that their marketing and business was not aligned. In other words, their marketing output is not aligned to the business objectives. That's a very serious challenge. So much for me of the premise of the book is, how can we actually as marketers, because I love marketing, I love branding, it's my business and I would never love to do anything else. How can we as practitioners actually do a better job? So much of the premise for me in the book was to make it simple, to the point, and give people very clear pointers of how we can do our business of marketing better, align it better to business objectives, make sure it gets the results it must get, and ultimately work.
I fail to see that there's such a high percentage between business objective and marketing discipline. Why is that? And ultimately, whose fault is it? Does it sit with the marketing director, the brand manager, or is the chief executive to blame for that?
I think it's both. I think it's many CEOs honestly pay lip service to marketing. I think the fact that the consumer is at the center of most companies is simply not true, Jeremy. It's really factually not true. It's not part of the conversation other than paying lip service. I'm not talking about global multinationals like Procter & Gamble and Unilever, where it's endemic in the business. I'm talking about the average bank. Most of those guys, for instance, average even car company. The brand is not as central in the consumer in the discussion as it should be. I think the CEO is to blame, but I also think the marketer is to blame.
You say that it's about knowing what factors build the brand. It's also knowing that one element within those factors can detract, and you've got to be able to look out for the early warning signals.
That's critical.
So what does that mean? What would the early warning signals be?
I think early warning signals for me would be if you find, I've recognized over the years, if you find that gradually your awareness is starting to erode, that other brands are having greater talkability, for instance, in marketing terms, that you're starting to lose certain types of customers. Those early warning signals are incredibly important, because if you can pick them up soon enough, you can reverse them, Jeremy. If you take them too long, it's almost like it starts multiplying in intensity. So you've got to try and catch it before it's too late. And a lot of brands leave it, and then it is too late, and it's a lot more costly and difficult to reverse. I'm a great believer that marketing is a comprehensive discipline. It's not just about a brand and about advertising. It is about the value prop, the products. It's about the pricing. It is about the distribution of the product. It's about the way in which you appear in the trade. Those things are profoundly important. Many brands, look at Coca-Cola. The trade is a huge factor in the success of Coca-Cola. So that is what I mean when I talk about an equation, that if those things are properly aligned, and we have very clear guidelines and rules of how to align them better, although it's never definitive, but they're very good guidelines. If they are aligned, you have a far greater chance that the brand will succeed and that it'll work.
Now, if you work in the brand space, that book is well worth a read. Now, your views on those two interviews on our Facebook page. Here is the address, and also look out for my weekly column on enca.com. This week, how to kill a brand zombie. Coming up on the program, how a major South African financial services company has remade and reinvented its brand.
News that moves. enca.com.